What a wonderful day! What a wonderful day!
Absolutely.
Prime Minister has done
Absolutely. So,
unbelievable.
Kartikeya, I'm very happy to say that anyone who has been watching News9 and our coverage of G20 would have got the inside scoop a little early, because yesterday we had stuck our neck out as a as a publication and said that Modi hai to mumkin hai, and I think our Prime Minister has delivered the goods. Any skeptics about who are doubtful of India's ability to navigate these treacherous international geopolitics, I think all those concerns have now been laid to rest. I think India has demonstrated without any doubt its ability to fulfill the expectation the world has of a significant role for India going ahead in the 21st century, Kartikeya. So I think this is a big win, not just for the Prime Minister personally, but also for India as a nation, as an emerging nation, as an emerging global power. And most importantly, Kartikeya, this is a very clear indication of the room. I think Western powers and many other parts of the world, the global South, is willing to give India to achieve what they believe is a larger goal in the larger interest of the world. So this is a very solid endorsement of India's leadership, to my mind, Kartikeya, and definitely a personal win for Prime Minister Modi, because let us not forget that he has conducted the G20 in a very, very different fashion. It has actually
Sri,
set
can
a
I
new
ask you a
benchmark.
technical question, before we get into a broad thing? Shweta, I have got this message from my input editor, Brajesh. He has asked me, please ask this from Sri. Okay, so I do that.
Mhm.
Okay.
He's getting excited in the studio. He says, next G's allies, the Bharat 6G Alliance today announced that they have signed a memorandum of understanding to explore collaboration opportunities on 6G wireless technologies. The work will encompass aligning research development priorities that support a common 6G vision. A lot of stories have started to come on this right now.
Absolutely.
What does it mean, Sri?
Can I also quickly add to that? A
Please.
precursor to G20, Shri, and since you track economy policy very, very closely, we've seen greater ties between the two countries as far as transfer of technology is concerned. And now that's playing up even after an official communication has been reached. What sort of alliance are we looking at, and what sort of partnership are we looking at as far as tech transfer is concerned between US and India? It appears that the partnership is stronger than ever.
Absolutely, because when Prime Minister Modi came here in June, it was clear that the US was going to back India with critical technology. Now, that's critical technology going to be in the area of IT, communications, and defense as well. So I think this is again basically US saying that India is now a new partner. We are going to equip India with new technology, with more state-of-the-art technology, which in some sense allows US also to counterbalance China. Because let us not forget that China had the 5G technology. Huawei is a global player in in 5G technology, and a lot of companies are now moving away from Huawei because of the concerns they have on so this technology capability which US is now willing to give India is definitely not just important from an infrastructure perspective, but also it's a symbolic of the trust of the new, the friendship that's evolving between the two nations, Kartikeya.
Right.
Okay, Nishwata, may I ask this question? Sri, very soon Nirmala Sitharaman and Jaishankar will hold a press conference. What is your take? How are they able to deal with the issues like Taiwan and Ukraine war? How did they manage? What must have happened?
Well, I don't have an inside track, unfortunately, but I can guess how India would have navigated this issue. See, I think yesterday also when we were chatting, it was clear that since the Bali declaration had already called the Russian, invasion of Ukraine a war, and there were significant statements made on that. I think they would have used that as a benchmark and convinced Russia that what we're going to say, what we're going to talk about is not going to be anything worse than what has already been said in the Bali Declaration. So that is possibly one tack which the Indian government and the Indian diplomats would have used, to my best guess. And on I believe that China has objected on certain territorial use of the word territorial boundaries, and so I think again they would have probably fallen back on the UN, UN enabled consensus and agreements which have been enabled over the last several years in some of these contentious border disputes and maritime disputes that China has, to convince the key stakeholders that what we are now stating in the declaration is nothing extraordinary, it is nothing provocative. In fact, it becomes a provocation only when China repeatedly objects and denies, and refuses to acknowledge what has been agreed upon at international multilateral fora, and China's refusal to work within this international framework, Kartikeya. So I think a lot of obviously convincing has gone into this, but my understanding is what India has been able to prove is two things. One is that this is nothing, there is nothing mischievous or nothing extraordinarily controversial about what we are stating in the declaration. And number two, it has also been able to, apart from these issues, also been able to prove or convince the world leaders that this declaration or these wordings or these commitments are important to move these conversations forward in a meaningful way. So I think at two levels, India has probably worked and achieved this. So kudos to Indian bureaucrats and the team that was working on it.
All right. And while we are celebrating this big achievement, I have to make our viewers understand why is it big in the first place. India had a very difficult road to travel, Shri, and if you'll agree with me, a very precarious position. You cannot offend your Western allies by not mentioning Ukraine at all. You cannot offend Russia by saying it's an all-out war. And India's managed to traverse a path which is a balanced path, which in a sense nobody has an objection to, makes everybody happy. The likelihood of that was unfathomable even about 12 hours ago. I mean, 6 hours ago, I remember Kartikeya and I talking in the newsroom, and Kartikeya was like, doesn't look like it's going to come through, doesn't look like it's going to happen. After Bali, we saw a lot of wrath. European Union was angry at Indonesia for not calling it an all-out war. Russia never agreed to calling it just a dispute. So to reach a consensus on an issue like that takes some amount of gumption, Shri.
No, absolutely, Neha, because see, it was not just a difficult road, but I would also say that if there was any one country which could have pulled it off, brought all these disparate forces and disparate interests together, is someone like India. Because I think over the last, several years, I think India's foreign policy has actually matured tremendously. And, it's very evident on the global stage that India is not interested in, being part of any bloc as such, that we have an independent foreign policy that, seeks to balance everyone's interest and work for the larger interest of the world. So, our move to bring, African Union into G20, I think it's a very, very important move. I think people are not understanding how significant this move is, because you cannot have a mass of 20% of world population, 18% or roughly 20%, kept out of these important conversations when we are actually talking about multilateral framework, about funding, about food security. These are issues that directly impact these countries the most. Because, for developed countries, for rich countries, it is never about access to food per se. It's about food inflation. That something that's available becomes slightly more expensive. But for these people, for these countries, the people of these countries, it's literally a question of life and death. So I think what India has done is tremendous. And I truly believe that if anyone could have done this in this kind of an environment where we see a clear polarization happening between US and Europe on one side and China, Russia on the other side, our ability to bring a larger part of the world into G20 and say that they are equal stakeholders, we must have them, we must listen to them, their concerns, and address those issues. I think it's a very, very significant thing that India has done, Neha.